Most things sold to you as passive income are actually just small businesses in disguise. You see the thumbnail of a guy drinking a coconut on a laptop, and the promise is always the same. Do the work once, get paid forever. But if you actually look at the operational requirements of running an Airbnb, or managing a dropshipping store, or building a content site, the math tells a very different story. These aren't investments. They are second jobs with variable pay and zero benefits. Today I want to break down the actual time cost of these popular side hustles compared to the only thing I have found that is truly passive, which is a low-cost index fund portfolio. We are going to put them on a graph of time versus money to see which ones actually buy you freedom and which ones just buy you another boss. Before we get into the numbers, we have to define what we are actually talking about. There is a massive difference between active business income and passive capital income. Active business income requires your input to keep the machine running. If you stop answering emails, the money stops. Passive capital income is when your money goes out and works so you don't have to. The problem is that the internet has blurred these lines to sell courses. They take an active business model, like e-commerce, slap some automation software on it, and call it passive. It is a marketing trick. I have looked at the data from host resources and e-commerce guides, and when you strip away the hype, what you are left with is a labour chart that looks suspiciously like a 9-to-5 job. I want you to think about your time as an asset class. If you are spending 20 hours a week to generate an extra $1,000 a month, you need to calculate your hourly wage on that equity. A lot of people get excited about the extra cash flow, but ignore the fact that they have effectively hired themselves for below minimum wage to be a cleaner or a customer service rep. That is what we are going to calculate today. We are going to look at the return on time, not just the return on investment. And if you are new here, this is what we do. We look at the math behind the money so you don't get played by the hype. If you want to stop trading time for money and start making your money work for you, make sure you are subscribed. It is the best return on investment you will get for $0. We break down these financial realities every week without trying to sell you a masterclass on how to get rich by next Tuesday. Okay, let's look at the first major offender in the passive income myth, which is the short-term rental market. Let's talk about Airbnb. The dream is simple. You buy a property, or you arbitrage one, you list it online, and guests pay off your mortgage while you travel the world. It sounds perfect. It sounds passive. But when you dig into the host-facing resources, the people who actually run these units, tell a completely different story. This is not real estate investing in the traditional sense. This is the hospitality industry. And hospitality is notoriously labour-intensive. You are effectively running a boutique hotel where you are the receptionist, the cleaner, the maintenance guy, and the conflict resolution officer. The platform wants you to believe it is seamless. But the minute a guest can't figure out the lockbox at 2 a.m, you realise exactly how active this income is. Let's look at the hours. Data from Bendigo Accommodation suggests that self-managing a short-term rental takes between 14 and 20 hours a week. Think about that. That is half a standard work week. That includes managing bookings, coordinating cleaning crews, updating pricing to match local events, and handling guest communication. Labode Accommodation backs this up, estimating about 2 to 3 hours a day for a successful listing. Even professional management companies estimate 8 to 16 hours just for the basics. So if you have a full-time job already and you decide to pick up an Airbnb to generate passive income, you haven't bought freedom. You have just bought yourself a part-time night shift. You are trading your evenings and weekends to ensure strangers have fresh towels. This is where the math gets brutal. Let's say your Airbnb nets you $2,000 a month after the mortgage and utilities are paid. That sounds great on paper, But if you are putting in 20 hours a week to get that, you are working roughly 85 hours a month. $2,000 divided by 85 hours is about $23 an hour. Now, $23 an hour isn't terrible, but it certainly isn't wealth. And remember, that income carries risk. You carry the vacancy risk, the property damage risk, and the regulatory risk. If you adjusted that hourly wage for the risk you are taking, you might actually be making less than minimum wage. You are taking on the liability of a business owner for the wages of a shift worker. Beyond the math, there is the psychological toll. A study in Frontiers in Psychology described hosting as intimate yet fleeting interactions with strangers in your private domain. That is a fancy way of saying it is stressful. You are constantly on call. You are worrying about bad reviews. You are dealing with people who don't know how to use a thermostat, or who throw a party when they said it was just 2 people. This creates a low-level background anxiety that is the opposite of passive. True passive income should lower your blood pressure, not raise it. With Airbnb, you are constantly tethered to your phone. Every notification could be a booking, or it could be a disaster you have to solve immediately. That mental load prevents you from ever truly clocking off. Now, the counter-argument is always automation. People say, Tom, I will just hire a management company. And sure, you can do that. But management companies typically take 20 to 30% of your revenue, not your profit, your revenue. Once you factor that in, your margins often collapse to the point where you would have made more money just putting that cash into a high-yield savings account. You pay for passivity with your profit margin. But if you think the housing headache is bad, wait until you see the reality of the second favourite internet side hustle, dropshipping. Because at least with a house, you own an asset. With dropshipping, you own nothing but a job. Dropshipping is marketed as the ultimate make money while you sleep strategy. You don't touch the product, you don't hold inventory, you just set up a store and let the supplier handle the rest. It sounds incredibly lean. And it is lean in terms of capital, but it is incredibly heavy in terms of labour. Even the guides that promote dropshipping, like the ones from WooCommerce or Brands Gateway, admit that it is a semi-passive model at best. They list the requirements: niche selection, website building, branding, customer support, and marketing. That word marketing is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, because in dropshipping, you aren't really in the product business. You are in the attention business. Here is the reality of the daily grind. Since you are selling generic products that anyone else can sell, your only competitive advantage is how much noise you can make. This means you are on a constant treadmill of content creation and ad management. WooCommerce calls this labour-intensive content marketing. You have to write blogs, shoot TikToks, tweak Facebook ad copy, and constantly test new creatives. If you stop running ads, the traffic stops immediately. There is no residual value. You haven't built a brand equity that compels people to come back. You have just rented eyeballs for a few seconds. This puts you in the 10 to 40 hours per week band for serious operators. You are essentially a freelance digital marketer who only gets paid if the product sells. Then there is the customer service. Because you don't control the supply chain, things go wrong constantly. Shipping delays from China, wrong items sent, damaged goods. And guess who has to deal with the angry customer? You do. You are the face of the business. You are spending your mornings answering emails about why a package is stuck in customs. Reddit communities for passive income are full of people realizing this isn't a passive role. It demands dedication. Dealing with refunds and chargebacks is distinct administrative work. It is emotionally draining and it is time-consuming. You are basically volunteering to be the complaint department for a factory halfway across the world. We also need to talk about platform risk. This is the hidden cost that doesn't show up on a spreadsheet until it destroys you. Dropshippers are entirely dependent on third-party platforms. You rely on Meta for ads, Shopify for hosting, and PayPal or Stripe for processing. Any one of these can shut you down overnight. Facebook changes an algorithm and your ad costs double. PayPal freezes your funds because you had too many returns. You have to constantly adapt to these rule changes. That is active management. You are fighting for survival against giant tech companies that don't care about your margins. That is not passive income. That is high-stakes crisis management. So, if Airbnb is a hospitality job and dropshipping is a marketing job, does passive income actually exist? Or is it all just a scam? The answer is that it does exist, but it is boring. It doesn't make for a viral TikTok video. It doesn't require you to wake up at 4 a.m. to grind. In fact, it requires you to do almost nothing. And that is exactly why most people fail at it. They can't handle the boredom. Let's talk about the only thing that sits on the far left of our time cost graph, the index fund. An index fund is about as close to truly passive as money gets. Instead of trying to pick the winning stock, or the winning neighborhood for an Airbnb, or the winning product for a store, you just buy the whole market. You buy a tiny slice of the 500 largest companies in America, or the total global stock market. You are leveraging the labor of millions of employees at Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon. They are the ones waking up early. They are the ones stressing about product launches. You just hold the paper that says you own a piece of it. Once this is set up with automatic contributions, the required personal time is near zero. We are talking about maybe 2 hours a year. The data backs this up. SmartPurse describes this strategy as simple and low maintenance, backed by decades of evidence. But the real comparison here is the cost of trying to be active. When you try to beat the market, whether by picking stocks or running a business, you incur costs. You incur transaction fees, taxes, and the cost of your own time. Morningstar's research on passive costs highlights that index funds are cheaper and less labour-intensive than active strategies. When you buy the market, you are accepting the market return, which historically is around 7 to 10% nominal. That sounds lower than the promise of a crypto coin going to the moon, but it is reliable, and crucially, it requires 0 labour hours to maintain. The return on time is infinite because the time input is effectively 0. Here is the twist. The hardest part of index fund investing is the psychology. We are wired to believe that effort equals reward. If we work harder, we should make more money. So when I tell you that the best strategy is to buy a total market fund and then literally do nothing for 20 years, your brain rejects it. It feels lazy. It feels like you're missing out on an edge. But the European Central Bank analysis notes that active funds consistently underperform after fees. The more you tinker, the more you usually lose. The work in passive investing isn't reading charts or managing properties. The work is emotional discipline. It is the ability to sit on your hands when the market crashes and do absolutely nothing. That is a very different kind of difficulty than scrubbing a toilet in an Airbnb. So what does the workflow actually look like? It is laughably simple. Step 1, you open a brokerage account. Step 2, you choose a low-cost, broad market index fund or ETF. Step 3, you set up an automatic transfer from your checking account every time you get paid. Step 4, you log out and forget the password. That's it. Your maintenance is rebalancing once a year, which takes about 20 minutes. On our graph, this sits at the bottom left, near 0 hours, with a predictable, compounding result. It is the boring path to wealth, but it is the only one that leaves you with the time to actually enjoy the wealth. Now, I know what you are thinking. Tom, I can make way more money with an Airbnb than I can with a 7% return in the stock market. And you are right, you can. But you are comparing apples to oranges. You are comparing a business to an investment. And this is where most people get trapped. They look at the raw dollar amount and ignore the lifestyle cost. We need to visualize this on a specific chart to see where you actually fall. Picture a graph. The x-axis is time input, from 0 hours to 80 hours a week. The y-axis is passivity. On the far right, with high time input and low passivity, you have a standard job. Right next to it, often even higher on hours, is a self-managed Airbnb or a new dropshipping store. You are working hard for that money. As you move left, you might find a managed real estate property where you pay a manager, so your time goes down, but so does your return. Then, all the way on the far left, hugging the zero line, are index funds. The question isn't just, how much money do I make? The question is, how much money do I make per hour of stress? This is the distinction you need to make. Airbnb and dropshipping are entrepreneurship. They are active businesses. And that is fine. If you want to be an entrepreneur, go for it. Build an empire. But don't kid yourself that it is passive. You are building a machine that requires your hand on the crank. Index funds are capital allocation. You are taking money you already earned and sending it off to multiply without you. If you are checking your phone every day, answering messages or tweaking ads, that is not passive income. That is a second job. And if you already have a job you don't like, why would you go home and start another one that pays less and has no HR department? There is a place for active businesses. If you have zero capital, you can't invest in index funds because 7% of zero is zero. In that phase, you need active income. You need to hustle. You might need to start that dropshipping store or rent out that room to build up your initial pile of cash. But the goal should always be to move that cash from the active bucket to the passive bucket. The trap is getting stuck in the active bucket forever, thinking you are an investor when you are actually just a tired business owner. The end game is always true passivity. So, here is the summary. Airbnb, it's a hospitality job. Dropshipping, it's a digital marketing job. Index funds, that is wealth generation. Don't let the internet gurus confuse you. They sell the dream of passivity using the mechanics of activity. If you want a second job, start a side hustle. It can be rewarding and it can be profitable. But if you want freedom, you need to separate your time from your money. That is what the S&P 500 does. It works while you sleep, while you vacation, and while you play with your kids, without ever asking you to fix a leaky faucet. I want to hear from you guys in the comments. Have you tried Airbnb or dropshipping? Did you track your hours? I want to know what your actual hourly wage was when you factored in all the stress and the late night emails. Let's get some peer review going down there so we can see the reality behind the Instagram posts. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for caring about the math, and I will see you in the next one.